These are some of the worst thumbnail habits that absolutely fuck small channels from growing. And so today I'll show you how to fix them and exactly what to do instead. But before I can get into that, I need to share some context. My name is JeremyB. I'm the owner and founder of all of these YouTube channels you see on your screen, and I've personally gotten over 1.4 billion views on long-form YouTube content by using really clickable thumbnails to push videos to 1, 3, 5, even 10 million views and beyond. Let's get into it. The first thing we want to do with our thumbnails, and that is your thumbnail should never have more than 3 major elements. Anything more than 3 major elements is just too much for the brain to process instantly. Like a viewer needs to be able to look at a thumbnail and just instantly understand the entire picture immediately, because they're literally just scrolling through their feed, like scrolling. Sometimes they might look at a thumbnail for literally like 0.001 seconds in a lot of cases, right? And we have to grab a viewer with that little amount of time. And doing anything more than 3 major elements is going to really cause your thumbnails to just be way too complicated and way too hard to understand. Obviously, you could definitely do less than 3 major elements. There are plenty of amazing thumbnails that have 1 or 2 major elements. 1 to 3 elements definitely keeps our thumbnails simple, but also interesting. Anything more than that is just way too cluttered and way too messy, and it's going to be hard for people to understand. And also, I'll add a point here is that every single element in your thumbnail should have a purpose for being in the picture. It needs to lead to the click in some sort of way. So here's an example for a kind of difference between doing a bunch of major elements and not. So this was a video about the evolution of Star Wars video games from 1982 to 2020. This was a thumbnail we did on one of our channels, and you can notice that there's just so much going on. It's just so cluttered. It's so hard to see like this individual element here, which is supposed to be like our main thing of this like old Star Wars video game. It's like you can't even really see it in this picture. There's so many different characters. There's too many elements. It's hard to understand, and you have to look at the picture for a really long time to see everything. Whereas on the right side, this was the thumbnail we actually used. There's only 3 elements. We've got the left side, the right side, and then the text at the bottom. You can understand it easily because there's like a before and after element. It's very easy to understand. You can instantly look at the picture and can see the concept. You got to remember, people see thumbnails that's on their phone, it's on their TV screen, it's on their computer, and there's like 20 different videos in the same picture. So literally people see thumbnails at a size of like this, you know, it's like sometimes even smaller than this. It could be like that if they have a small phone. So another thing as well, kind of a very similar note here, is we want to avoid minor elements. And the idea here is that everything in your thumbnail needs to contribute to getting people to click in some significant way. Otherwise it should be removed. Like you should be able to look at a thumbnail picture and tell me, okay, why is this in the picture? Like this picture here on the right. Why is this left side in the picture? Why is this right side in the picture? Why do we have this text at the bottom? Why do we have this versus logo? Well, it's because we're doing an evolution of Star Wars video games. So we want to show the first ever Star Wars video game on the left. We show the most recent video game on the right, which was this one in 2020. We have the dates to show the before and after date, and then the verses to show the difference of the 2 options. You should always have an intentional reason for putting something in your thumbnail. There's no point in having any minor details in your thumbnails because people are not going to notice them, or most of the time, they're not even going to be able to see them. It just overcomplicates your picture for no reason and no benefit. And at the end of the day, with thumbnails, less is more. The thumbnail needs to be able to be fully understood in just a split second in a very small resolution. So let's take a look at an example here. So we've got our picture on the right here, which is kind of the version with a bunch of minor elements. And we've got this kind of thumbnail style of showing just 2 of the different facts from the video. You can see here, the picture on the left, we've got just like a bunch of random stuff in the background. There's like the terrain is all different. We've got this little cactus and lava. We've got this tree here in the background and all these little hills and stuff. And all these things are just so not important, right? Like if we look at this, we just changed this left side to a completely flat sand background. And this picture on the right, we just changed it to a completely flat grass background. Those minor elements do not add anything. Like nobody's ever going to click on this video because we got a little tree in the background, right? Or because there's a little cactus here that you could barely see, right? They just distract from our major things in the picture, and it just hurts the focus on our main elements that are actually trying to get people to click on our video. You can see here, there's 0 minor elements. We've just got the text, and then the left side, this like rainbow colored armor, and then the right side, this little pickaxe. So there's full focus on the main elements because there's nothing else distracting. It also makes the main elements way bolder, way bigger, just easier to understand. So you're just focused on the actual concept that is being presented in the picture, which is what matters. So the next element is a little bit similar. Our backgrounds must stay in the background. Your backgrounds should be simple, and they should most importantly contrast from your main elements. Any sort of background you have in your picture should bring the focus into the main elements of whatever you've got going on. And then you always want to remove any and all small details and not necessary
unnecessary things from backgrounds. So here's an example. We've got another one of our thumbnail templates here of this guy holding up a bunch of different little app icons with his fingers. So although this picture on the left doesn't necessarily seem that bad, it's going to be really so much worse for getting people to actually click on our video, because the main parts of our picture, which are these app icons here, are just going to be so hard to see and understand. Like, especially when we're looking at this very small, it's like it almost like blends into the background, and that just ruins the concept of our thumbnail picture by quite a lot. So this one on our left side, we've got a distracting background, makes the main elements really hard to see. And at the end of the day, nobody is ever going to click on the video for a background. If you have something in your background that you really want to show and have a lot of importance, then it shouldn't be in your background. It should be at the front of your picture as one of your main elements. Here we've got the kind of better example here. The background contrasts with the main elements really nicely. It brings full focus to the things that we're trying to get people to click on, which are these like little apps concepts here with this guy's face. And most importantly, you can look at this and just instantly understand the entire picture. So you got to keep your backgrounds in the background. Don't have backgrounds that are overly complicated, and anything else should be very simplified, and you want them to ideally contrast from your main elements. The next one is you want to eliminate your empty space in your thumbnail. Big areas of empty space makes your overall thumbnail look a lot smaller and stand out a lot less in the YouTube feed. Parts of your element within your thumbnail should honestly exceed the frame to a certain extent. We don't show the person's face like 100%. Having his face so much bigger does have a big impact. And so what we want to do here is, if you have empty space in your thumbnail, you should enlarge your existing elements to fill the empty space, or if you have less than 3 elements, you could consider adding a new one. That is something that will help your thumbnail a little bit. So here's another one of our templates for an example for eliminating empty space. So we've got this picture on the right is our actual thumbnail template, but here's an example of me just making it bad. So this one on the left here, you can see there's like small elements. The picture is not filled up. The guy's face is very small. There's only 2 apps here, so it's like there's a lot of empty space going on. Something that's very interesting here with this comparison is that these 2 pictures are the exact same size, but I don't know if it's just me, but this picture on the left literally looks smaller. Like, I'll prove to you the size here is exactly the same. Like, look, the width is the same, the height is the same. It literally like overlaps the picture perfectly. They are the exact same size. So how do we fix that? On the right side, first of all, we enlarge the elements and we expand on our existing elements so that they can cover up the space a little bit better and be a little bit more powerful. So we add some more apps here. We make the guy's face bigger. Now you can see here, we don't literally fill like every tiny little pixel of empty space, right? Like, there's still some black background here on the edges, but the idea here is that the overall space of the picture has no gaps in it. There's no breaks of space. Like, we don't have this big gap in the middle or like kind of the tops here. And then the overall picture just feels much bigger and much more powerful. It's a mistake that a lot of newer creators do, because they look at their thumbnails like a full resolution. They see it like this and they're like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. But then when you actually like look at it really small, it's like, it's just so empty and it's just not as interesting and not as powerful of a thumbnail picture. So the next one is something that I think a lot of people do, and that is repeating your title in the thumbnail. You should never put your title in the thumbnail. Your viewer already knows what the title is when they see your thumbnail. Restating the title in your thumbnail, it's just about the same as having a full black screen as your thumbnail, and it just adds no value and no useful information here. So here for this example, we've got another one of our thumbnail templates, and it's a little bit simple, but let's say we have a video about Elon Musk's best tricks for business. So we have this one here on the left where you're restating the title. It's literally pointless. The viewer knows how to read, they will read your title, and it does not build any interest whatsoever in the video. So what we want to do instead with our text is we change this to being something like a quote, an info, maybe a message, generally something that builds on what the title already is. Maybe we add some intrigue about one of the points. Like if we have a video, maybe Elon Musk's 10 best tricks for business, we have a quote of him talking about one of the tricks in the video. So again, I think hopefully you can kind of see this, is that just restating the title is literally pointless.
And by the way, all these thumbnail examples I'm showing you, these are based on thumbnail templates that we have and we use for our videos. And you can actually get access to them if you join our YouTube Growth Bootcamp and watch all the way until the end. In the bootcamp, I just take you through step by step the full process that I'm using to grow all of my channels and many other of our students as well. And at the end of the bootcamp, there's an offer that includes all of our templates with it. You can join the bootcamp for free at the link in the description or with the QR code on your screen, and back to the video.
So another one that I think a lot of smaller creators struggle with, or maybe don't necessarily think about, is that if you put text in your thumbnail, it needs to be readable in literally 0.01 seconds, because they already have a bunch of text that they need to read in the title. And then there's the thumbnail that they have to look at, and they have so little time to do these things that it really needs to be like just instant. So here's some good rules of thumb for doing that. So first of all, I would say you want to put maybe 3 to 4 words of text maximum in your thumbnail. The viewer already has to read the title, so really big long text in thumbnails is pointless and it's just going to be completely ignored. You could maybe do 5 to 6 words if it really contributes to the main clickable element of your video packaging and is not restating the title in any way. But I think most of the times you can usually shorten that to 3 to 4 words really easily. Like for example, I was really thinking about making this text as like, this trick number 2 changed everything, or this second trick changed my life forever. And I was like, man, this is so long, like this is too much text. I'm just gonna do this changed everything. Gets the same point across in less words. We want to make our text really easy to read. We use big, blocky, and very condensed fonts where the letters are very close together. Because if you have a font where the letters are kind of spread apart and they're a little bit too fat or too long, you end up having to make your text really small to fit it in horizontally, and it ends up just way too small and difficult to read. We also want to do some edits on our text. So in Photoshop, we do what's called a stroke and a small shadow, or I think actually what's even better in my opinion, and I'm doing this a lot more these days, is literally just put a contrasting colored rectangle behind your text. So some of the best colors you could use are white with a black border stroke, or white with a black rectangle in the background, or you could have yellow with a black border and rectangle. You can do all sorts of color combinations with this. The key here is that the color should contrast. So as long as you have a rectangle background that contrasts from the text color, it's going to be super readable. So here's an example of that. This was for one of our Roblox videos where we are showing just like a bunch of different just cool little tricks from the game. So we've got these 2 facts of our pwn glyph and old fruits, and you can see here the difference in text and how easy this one is on the right to read and how difficult this one is on the left here. So on the left here, we've got super unreadable text. The font is really bad. It's very poorly presented because it kind of overlaps the background, so it's difficult to read. And also the text is literally smaller because the letters are too spaced out and far apart and cannot be condensed properly. So you can see our font on the right here, the letters are super close together, and that allows us to make the text actually just bigger. And it's super readable because we have this contrasting rectangle in the background. We've got black text with a yellow background rectangle. We've got this really big, blocky, and condensed font, and it just adds a lot more to the thumbnail here. Then you can see kind of the difference in readability here. It's so significant. You can also do it in lots of other ways where we have like a stroke or a shadow or some sort of effect, but really we just got to make sure our text contrasts well from whatever is behind it. So make sure your text is really readable and is something that can be looked at instantly. Because remember, our thumbnails are going to be seen like this small. So literally, like you look at this for 0.2 seconds, you don't even read the text, but here on the right side, it's like, okay, you can read the text instantly. You can understand what's going on and you can see the picture and know what it is. And it's just so much better and so much more powerful. So another key point for our thumbnails, I think, is we really don't want to rely on personal branding. Nobody cares about who you are or your videos. They have no reason to care about you until you make them do through your content. And more specifically, even if someone does care about you, they don't need to see your branding to want to watch your video. They've seen your previous videos, they know who you are, and they do care about your content. So we really want to avoid logos as the biggest one. Logos are so pointless. It's just there's just no reason to ever put your logo in a thumbnail. Episode numbers as well. I'm a really big fan of never putting those in thumbnails and just never putting personal brand elements in your pictures. I will say here as an exception, using your own face or repeating characters is okay, but you should not rely on them as your main thing to get clicks. Like your face being in the thumbnail shouldn't be the main reason for someone to click on your video, because 99% of your viewers don't know your face and they don't know who you are. So it's not really that powerful to them, right? Like on some of our channels, we do have our face shown in the thumbnails. If it's like a faceless channel, we might have like a character where we just use the same character in the thumbnail over and over again. And that allows us to have like a small little personal brand element with our core audience, but our thumbnails are never designed around these elements as the main draw, because these are not things that get new viewers to click on our videos. So we just do not want to rely on them ever for our thumbnails to be successful. And again, we got to really keep in mind here, appealing to your core audience really does not matter. But the reason why it doesn't matter is because your core audience is going to click on your video because they like your content, right? They are your core audience because they already like what you are doing. So you don't need to show anything to them whatsoever that says that it's your video, because they already are going to watch because they know, like, and trust you. Your channel name is shown in the video feed. This alone is already more than enough of an element for your core audience to know that it's your video. So here's a kind of before and after example. We've got this picture as our thumbnail template. It's kind of like this little graph sort of trick picture where we're showing some sort of progress or results. And on this one on the left, I added some random personal branding here. You can see here, like, even this, the way I did it was, it looks pretty good, right? Like, I got this little logo here. I got this little text, like the text looks nice. You could say on paper, this looks fine, but if you really stop and think about it, like, just nobody cares. You know, nobody cares about my personal brand or the fact that this is episode number 47 or whatever the heck is going on. Just nobody cares. And this branding clutters the pic really badly. Remember, we got to go back to our earlier point of just saying no minor elements in our thumbnails, and these personal branding elements, they're literally just minor elements that aren't important. So we've got our picture here on the right. There's literally no personal branding whatsoever. An overall better thumbnail is more appealing to our core audience anyway, because they already like our videos, and it's also way more interesting to new viewers, which is literally like 97% of your viewers, most likely 100% if you have a small or a new channel. So we just really don't want to do any personal branding in our videos. The most you could ever go with personal branding is just using your face in thumbnails, but you don't want to rely on that as the element that people are clicking for. So another thing I will say is when you're using people's faces in pictures, just kind of in general, first of all, the emotion should be very evident and ideally should be quite exaggerated. I think faces in thumbnails want to always display some sort of extreme emotion. Otherwise, it does not add much to your picture. If you have a guy that's just like a picture of someone in your thumbnail, it's just like, versus some guy like, whoa, that's the craziest thing ever. It's like, it just makes your video feel so much more important. And of course, we want to match the emotion of our picture to an exaggerated feel of the video packaging. So whatever your video content or concept is about, we kind of want to match the emotion to that. And then you can also color correct the person's face by adding contrast and saturation to make their face much brighter and more vibrant. Do not add too much brightness to them. So here's an example here. Graham Stephan, the king of emotion in thumbnails, I think. I decided to use this picture because I just thought it was a really, really good example. But you can see here, this picture on the left here, it's a normal picture. There's not much emotion. It doesn't seem super interesting. And overall, the video just doesn't feel important because he's just kind of got a normal face going on. Nothing's really going on. But here it looks like, you know, he looks like his freaking dog died, or like his sister just got cancer, or like he looks like he's the most devastated person ever, right? He's like crying. And the key here really is the picture is intentionally taken for the thumbnail to have big emotion, seems way more powerful, and overall just makes the video topic seem like a big deal. And there's so many ways to express this type of emotion. Like there's tons of thumbnails where people are really excited and just crazy happy. This one is like really sad, really emotional. This is a really, really good thumbnail face. It's like people being really sad. Or a lot of thumbnails where it's like people are really concerned or just very stressed out or anxious, nervous, or worried. It doesn't have to be the classic thumbnail face of the guy going like, it doesn't have to be the face like that, right? You just want to have a lot of big emotion in your thumbnail, and your emotion should relate to whatever your video topic is about. And I think you can see here the picture on the right is just infinitely more powerful than the picture on the left, and it's just so much better. So on the notion of color correcting your faces, I think in general, you always want to color correct your thumbnails. All the elements in your thumbnail, your entire thumbnail should always be color corrected in some way because you want your thumbnail to be bold, bright, and colorful. But it's really important to understand how to actually do this because people, I say like, oh, you want to make your thumbnail bright, and then people go into Photoshop and they add like 100 brightness into their thumbnail and it looks awful. What happens is when you add a bunch of brightness, it just makes all your colors blend together and it makes everything super dull and dim and just like super white and just really, really bad. So the way to achieve this color correction is not to add brightness in our photo editing. It is to increase contrast and saturation so that our colors are more vibrant. And the key here is that different elements of our thumbnail are in different contrasting colors. And the way we get our thumbnails to feel really bright and colorful is that we have significant contrast between colors so that they individually stand out more. In Photoshop, what I like to do is roughly a plus 60 to 80 contrast and adding plus 20 to 30 saturation using the color filters. And this causes your pictures to stand out really nicely in the YouTube feed without having to do anything crazy to them. So here's another one of our thumbnail templates. We've got the exact same picture on the left and the right. So we can see that this left side has absolutely zero color correction. It looks super dull and bland. It's not going to stand out. And in my opinion, the picture itself literally feels more boring. boring because the elements are just not as interesting and you can't really see what's going on as well too. Here we've got a lot of different contrasts of the colors. We've got like the lava in the background, the blue water, and we've got the sky. Even his shirt stands out more with the animal that he's riding, the animal fur and the grass and the sky. It's just like we've got all this color correction added, which is mostly just contrast and saturation to each of our individual elements. It looks way brighter and way more vibrant, even though the brightness of these pictures is actually the same. What we did was we just add a bunch of contrast and saturation to this picture on the right, and just the overall picture will stand out much better in feeds. And really, this is how you get your thumbnails in your feeds to stand out really well. People always talk about doing these like crazy graphic designs or like super weird, highly edited elements, these crazy Photoshop designs to make their picture stand out in the thumbnail feed. It's like, no, you don't need any of that shit. You just need to have good color correction and your picture will stand out very nicely in the feed. And this is a really good example of why, because you can literally see like the difference here in the colors. It's like so incredibly vibrant on the right side and so would stand out so much more in the YouTube feed. One more thing I'll also say is don't be afraid to just exaggerate things, to clickbait a little bit. You know, at the end of the day, nobody wants to watch an average video or a video that's going to have an average information, average result, average outcome, average method, etc. People want to watch something that they feel is going to be big, interesting, exciting, and is going to make a difference. And if the video is good, people do not care about the clickbait as long as it's not like too ridiculous, which I don't think it ever would be. And what's always held true without exception is that if your viewers are complaining about clickbait, it really just means that your content wasn't actually good enough and people didn't enjoy your content enough to look past the fact that they got clickbaited into the video. Because the truth is that if you have a video that's really good content and really worth watching, if you trick people into watching your video, they will be thankful that you tricked them into watching their video because the content was so good. So as long as your content really delivers, then you can do pretty much anything in your thumbnails and it's going to be fine. The one important thing I will say where you kind of want to draw the line is you still want to stay within the realm of your video topic. Otherwise your average view duration is probably going to tank and be really bad. You don't want to just title your video and have a thumbnail that like literally doesn't even make any sense for the content. It still needs to fit within the realm of what you're doing for your video, but just really don't be afraid to exaggerate elements that are still true to your content. And here's an example of that. So this is a video that we did that was kind of about like a little experiment for making money using YouTube. And we've got this balance here on the left side, the before negative 1702, and then the after is $20. But then here on the right side, we've got the before balance of negative $17, and then the after is like $5,000. So this one here on the left, it's just a very average result. Like it just feels like a much less interesting video to me. And really, you know, why should I care about something that makes $40, right? Like why should I care enough to watch a video where you make $40? That's just not interesting, right? Whereas here on the right side, we've got this big massive result of making $5,000. It's the same idea, but way more powerful. We still want to keep it realistic, right? Like I wouldn't do an after of like making $5 million. We still want to keep it believable and realistic, but it's a bigger result and much more interesting. And most notably, what I should say to you guys as well is that in this video, we did actually only make $40. So this picture here on the left is more accurate to what the video actually was, but we used this thumbnail on the right and nobody actually cared because the content was really good. So this right side picture was much stronger and people did not care about the clickbait at all because the content was good. That's kind of our example there. Let's get into just some other things, some other kind of just key elements that I wanted to mention to you guys. The biggest thing is your thumbnails need to always have a reason to click in some way, shape, or form. At the end of the day, you just want to be able to answer the question of like, why would someone want to click on this thumbnail? Why would this thumbnail make someone interested in this video? And you got to really look at your thumbnail from the perspective of if you just saw this picture as a random video on YouTube in your feed, you didn't know who it was from, you didn't know what the video was for, would you click on it? And if so, why or why not? Go from there and try to really improve it. And at the end of the day, you know, people don't click for fancy graphic design. They click because the thumbnail gets them interested in the video in some way. So it's all about presenting a really interesting concept or a really interesting story or a really interesting element that gets people to want to watch our video. I call that kind of having a point of interest or like a clickbait element. You have that reason that gets people to click on your video that's in your thumbnail. And that is so much more important than having some sort of like nice fancy Photoshop design or some nice fancy graphics. Or like these things look cool. These pictures look great and all, but like the actual like graph here and the trick is so much more powerful than like this cool design of this line and this like little subtle shadows and these like cool little elements. Like that stuff doesn't really matter. What matters is the concept of this graph going up and why that graph is going up and what's related to it. You have to really think about that when you're designing your thumbnails. So that's it for this thumbnail training video. I think this was a really good video and a lot of really good examples. So every single one of these thumbnails that I showed in this video is actually one of our templates, except for this Graham Stephan one, because this is such a simple picture that I didn't really see a need to make a template for this one because you could literally just make this yourself. It's literally just text and a picture of his face. It's like a super easy picture to just recreate yourself if you wanted to do this type of picture on your own too. This is a good thumbnail in my opinion, so if you wanted to do this as one of your thumbnails, you could do that in some way.
And again, if you want to get access to all of the templates of the examples that I showed, plus we actually have an additional 70 more thumbnail templates of very similar, same high quality thumbnails. We have versions in both Photoshop and free softwares of them too. If you join our bootcamp and watch until the end, at the end there's an offer to access all of those templates for yourself. You can join that at the link in the description or with the QR code on your screen. And thank you so much for watching this video.